Ready? Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Thanks for joining us. We have a wonderful program planned. We have a very special guest here from the U.S. For the last 16 years, Susanna Welford has founded 2 organizations designed to raise the political voice of young women in America. In spring 2007, she founded Running Start, a program to inspire young women and girls to political leadership. Running Start furthers the work begun by the Women Under 40 Political Action Committee, which she co-founded in 1999. This is a national women's group dedicated to electing young women to political office. Susanna Welford speaks frequently to colleges, law schools, political groups, trade associations, and nonprofits about the importance of involving more young women in politics. She has also lectured about politics to many international groups, including women from Kuwait, Southeast Asia, Korea, Bahrain, Russia, and now Ukraine. So please join me in welcoming our speaker for this evening, Susanna Welford.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. How are you? So this is my almost last day in Ukraine. I got here on Sunday, and I leave on Saturday. And it's my first trip to Ukraine. And I just have to tell you, I've been so pleased with everybody I've met. People have been so warm. They've been so interesting and intelligent. And we have had great conversations. Because, frankly, I really don't like to lecture. I would much rather talk to you all, find out what you care about, what you're interested in talking about, rather than just tell you what I know. So I'm going to start and do a little bit of that and tell you who I am and what I do. And then I'm going to show you a video from the Running Start website that I think will be just a cool way to see more of what Running Start does. And then I'd like to have a discussion with you all about why there are not enough women in leadership anywhere in the world, at any level, in any industry, and about what we can do about it. And that part is the part where I really want your help. I want you all to be part of the conversation so that we can really help to figure some things out together. Okay, so Running Start is a very unusual organization. We have been around for 11 years, and the whole idea around Running Start came from the fact that in American politics, there are not enough women. This is not unusual, as I said. There are not enough women in Ukrainian politics, not enough women in U.S. politics or British politics or anywhere else. And a lot of groups and a lot of other very smart people have been trying to solve this problem for many years in America. But still, the number of women in leadership was rising very incrementally, very, very slowly. And so I decided to go at it from a different tactic. And what we decided to do at Running Start was, instead of talk to women who were my age or in their 30s or 40s, or women who are really at the age where they would be most inclined to run for office, a lot of people were talking to those people, and the problem was they were not interested in running. They didn't want to run. They didn't think that they knew enough. It was not something that they wanted to do. And so what Running Start does is we talk to young women, ages 14 through 25, so that we can get in early with this message that leadership is something that everybody can do. Nobody's born a leader. It's just something that you learn. And that we can also get the message in that women are desperately needed in politics. And for the men in the room, I have to tell you all, I speak to groups that I almost always have men in the groups that I speak to. And if you walk away with one thing from hearing me speak, I want you all to understand that talking about women in leadership, it is absolutely not just something that's good for women or that's fair and it's a nice thing to do for women. It is so important for the strength of the world, the strength of governments. If we get more women into leadership, it is going to dramatically change how governments function and societies function for the better. So we can talk about that later. I want to just tell you a little bit about how we do what we do. So in Running Start, a typical person who comes to our program, she's really young. She's like 15 years old. And she comes to Washington, D.C. from, maybe she's in Montana or California or someplace far away. She comes to Washington, D.C. for an entire week of training. And what we do with her is we make her do the skills that you need to succeed in politics. These are skills like public speaking, which is, everybody hates public speaking, but you cannot be in a position of power at all if you can't do public speaking. We spend a lot of time talking about messaging because, again, you need to have a message in order to advocate for anything. We teach them networking. And just, picture this. This girl is 15. She's really, really young. And we put her in a room of really interesting, high-level professionals, and we give her a business card, and we teach her how to walk up to these people and say, "Hi, my name's Susanna Welford, and this is what I care about, and I want to connect with you." So I just, what I see, and then let me tell you a couple of other things. And we teach them fundraising, which is really the art of getting something from somebody that that person really wants to hold on to. We all want to hold on to our money, and how do you persuade that person to give you something that they care about? And so I've been doing this now for 11 years, and I can tell you absolutely that this works better than I ever dreamed that it would work. So we've had almost 12,500 graduates, and they're from all over the country, from the U.S., and they are running for school elections in their high schools and their colleges, and they're winning those. That's not that difficult to do, but it's still difficult. And they are running for local elections, and we've just started to see them start running for state elections. We've had nobody run for Congress yet, but they're still young. The oldest graduates we have are not yet 30. So when I come back here in maybe 5 years, I hope I'll be able to brag that we have many more. So that's what Running Start does. And we, our whole idea with these women is we want to, we've talked a lot while I've been in Ukraine about stereotypes, about how that's one of the most pervasive problems that people say about women getting into leadership, is that in Ukraine, women are supposed to do this stuff, men are supposed to do this stuff. It's very hard to break out of that box. And, it's very similar for women in the U.S. They feel like they fit into this place and not into these other boxes that have traditionally been the place for men. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to shake things up. We're trying to break them out of those boxes and get them to a point where they really feel and understand that politics and leadership is appropriate for them, that it's a place where they can have great value and worth, and then we want to show them a little bit about how to get there. So, and Sasha, would you mind showing the video? So I want to show you all a video of some of my students and one of my favorite initiatives, which is the I Look Like a Politician campaign.
Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that? The face of our next president? I mean, she's a woman. And I'm not supposed to say bad things, but really, folks, come on, are we serious? Donald Trump and the Rolling Stone.
While the Honorable Mazabuko may be a person of substantial weight, her stature is questionable.
When Barack Obama speaks, men here, take off for the future. And when Hillary Clinton speaks, men here, take out the garbage.
I'm going to send Sotomayor and her club a bunch of vacuum cleaners to help them clean up after their meeting.
Many senators are known for many things. We in the Senate refer to Senator Gillibrand as the hottest member.
It's ridiculous. It's insulting. It's demeaning. There's such a double standard that is happening in our society. It's really just disgusting that people say these things in real life. I can't believe it. It's really disturbing.
I look like a politician.
I look like a politician.
I look like a politician because I look like 50% of this country that's made up of women, and we all deserve equal representation in Congress.
I look like a politician.
I look like a politician.
The first moment that I actually saw my work ethic being paid off from the most important person in our entire office. That was my defining moment. I look like a politician.
I look like a politician.
it's what's inside that matters. It's your leadership abilities. And I want girls to understand that your gender identity doesn't define the fact that you can or can't lead. It actually enhances the way that you can lead.
I look like a politician.
I look like a politician.
I look like a politician because I have the confidence to know what I believe in and to stand up for it.
Okay, so that gives you all a sense of who comes to our programs and what the women are like. It's a very, very diverse group of young women, and I love this campaign because what it says is forget the stereotypes. Anybody can do this, which I really love that message. Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions. No, I'm going to tell you something first, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Okay, so first, women in the U.S., we make up under 20% of members of Congress. That's been climbing up a tiny bit. I think when I started, we were at 17% 10 years ago. Now we're at 20%. That's really not very good for 10 years. They say that if we keep going at the same pace that we're going right now in the U.S., that we will not have parity, so 50% men, 50% women, for 100 years, which is a really long time. So, that's one of the reasons that we feel such urgency to think of new ways to encourage women to run. And so this is true for the world too. Women in politics, if you sort of take the world as a whole, we average out at about 20%. And if you look at the percent of women who become partners in law firms in the U.S., more women than men graduate from law school, but only a quarter of women become partners. There are not enough women in academia. There are not enough women in the corporate world at all at the top levels. It's like 4% at the very top. And the same is true for medicine. The same is true across the board. And this is worldwide. It's better in some countries. It's worse in others. So how are you doing in the Ukraine? What's the percent of women in parliament in the Ukraine? Anybody guesses?
Around 10, probably less than the United States.
Wait, okay, less than the United States, 10, 30? Oh, you're so optimistic. That's so lovely. She's really wrong, but that's really good. So it's 12% in parliament. And I thought it was so interesting to see that actually, so in the U.S., a quarter of women, so 25% women are in the state legislature, or rather of people in state government, 25% are women. So in here, it's 18%. It's not that different, which is kind of interesting. Okay, and just for your context, because I think it's really interesting, so there's this great list that the Inter-Parliamentary Union does. It takes most of the countries in the world and it ranks them based on how many women they have in leadership. And I'll tell you that the U.S. is 100 on that list, which is shocking to Americans because Americans seem to always think, oh, well, we're number one. I'm sure we're like in the top 5. We are not in the top 5. We are number 100. And Ukraine is 143. Or maybe it's 123 now. I'm just forgetting. But I think whatever it is, it's not good. It's really not good. And I want to tell you just a couple of statistics. I actually got this great booklet when I was at an event, and it has a survey of people in Ukraine talking about women in politics. Let me just tell you a couple of statistics from that. Okay, so 57% of people in this country think that having more women in politics would mean that the country was more democratic, which presumably is a good thing. Only 31% of people in Ukraine said that there are enough women in leadership. Now, of course, if you break that down, the people who are saying that are mainly men, and 55% who said we need more women, they are mainly women. And then when the people were asked why women don't run, 46% said stereotypes, that it's just not a woman's place. It's not what people are used to seeing in women. And when they asked people, so what's the best solution? What can we do? So 44% said that the best thing that we could do to get more women into politics is have a really good PR campaign to make it look cool to run for office, which is actually interesting because in the US, when I sit with the other women who lead women's groups and we talk about, well, what can we do? We would love to have the money to have a huge PR campaign to make politics cool for women and for young people, because it's not so cool right now. I mean, it's really not the profession that most people want their children to get into. Is it here? I know the answer to this, but is politics cool in Ukraine?
It's different perception here.
Well, explain to me, because I really want to hear.
I mean, so like here, the perception is if you go to the politics
Mm-hmm.
or if you're a politician, this is the way how you earn money. And
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And this is also the question of like prestigious job.
Yeah.
So like if you're like if you're a politician,
Mm-hmm.
it means that you have very good background, like you have very good connections, you have like really good financial background.
Oh.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. And this is how it goes here. So it's not that people go and not all of them, but most of people, they believe that it's not for a change, but it's for like own benefit.
Okay, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I think that is so interesting because there's a total stereotype that I've heard many times at home, which is that men get into politics because they want to be powerful people who people look at and say, look at all the power that person has, and that women get into politics because they want to solve problems and they want to give power to other people. Is that always true? Absolutely not. However, I do think that if you were to take a survey, there probably are more men who think, I want to be that guy that everybody looks at and thinks is great. Right. So women, now I can't remember what was, oh, right. So I was just talking about why politics is not cool in America. So the big question that I spend all of my time on is, why do women not choose leadership? So if around the world women are not stepping up to the highest levels of leadership anywhere, why? What's holding them back? Is it external factors? Are they being kept out? Or is it internal factors that, maybe they don't want to, or they don't feel it's their place? So I'd love to spend a few minutes and find out from you all, what do you think it is here? And I can tell you how it compares to the US. So why don't women run for office here? Because you've just told me that actually, it's a place where you can actually get money and get power, and people will look at you as somebody who is important. So why are women not stepping up? Oh, yeah. Do you need the mic? Yeah.
So the question is why they are not stepping up and they don't go to the politics, right?
Well, I mean, I want to even make it broader and just say, why are women in Ukraine only 12% of parliament? Mm-hmm. And why are women in Ukraine not leading more businesses and playing a bigger role in leadership in the country?
Well, in my opinion, it's like the reason is the same. It's all about stereotypes and like this prejudice or this attitude that so people believe that if you're a woman, then you have like a certain row of responsibilities in your life and you have like a certain function in your life. Mm-hmm. That's why women not always think about their possibilities, in their career. And it's not only about like young women, it starts from the very young age. Like you could see from like little girls in school, when you just talk to them about like simple things, you could see that they have this like the society imposes these stereotypes on them. And that's why I think it's like a kind of challenge for them to go up or to go further or like to participate in politics. But this is only my opinion. It's like what I see from the situation.
Okay, so do people agree with her? Okay, can anybody add on? Yeah.
I may only add that it's, I don't know the statistics, the official data that we have here in Ukraine, but it's very interesting that at school or university or any other social activities, there are like 80% of girls who are organizing the events, I don't know, doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden they disappear somewhere. So I'm not quite sure where do they go or why do they leave, but maybe it's some like this sort of external pressure that you may not achieve something and you are not as good as guys are. But it's maybe also like sort of the feeling that you are not as smart as they are. But I would say that it's more of the external reasons and lack of confidence in yourself. That's the reason.
Wait, so internal, like feeling lack of confidence.
Yeah, lack of confidence and sometimes like misperceptions, maybe bullying from the other people.
So I actually promised that I was going to tell you what it's like in the U.S. So I speak like way too much in the U.S. to all different types of high school students and old ladies. I had a group of old ladies. I've got another one coming up, and it's just so crazy that everybody has the same answers, and they usually start out with what you said, and then they talk about how young girls are really ambitious and they feel absolutely equal to men, and they're doers, they start the clubs, they do all this stuff, but then there comes a time where their ambition just drops off a cliff, and it's like it's not appropriate anymore for them to lead. So yeah, but it's just so interesting to me that, I mean, we're all human, right? But our countries are so far apart, and yet we're all facing the same things. So tell me some other things. What are other things that you think are holding women back? Oh yeah, thank you.
The thing is that Christian Bible says that man is the leader of woman, and I think that's where this stereotype comes from.
Yeah.
What do you think on this score?
Yeah, but I think you're totally right, and it's not just the Christian Bible. I mean, it's other religions too that say that women need to be subservient to men. I mean, what I really think about that is for the history of the world, ever since humans have started organizing into governments, men have been the leaders. There are good reasons for that. I mean, men have more physical strength, which is probably the biggest reason that men have been the primary leaders. And so we are just starting to be in a place in history where women and men are saying, well, wait a minute, maybe actually women have something to offer that could help everybody in society as a whole.
Are we not trying to go against what the Bible says?
So, but I think, I mean, look, what I really personally think is I think there are a lot of interpretations. And I know many Christians who are very strong believers, but they don't interpret the Bible that same way. And it's the same with my friends who are Muslim. There are different interpretations. And I do think, I mean, what I really believe is that men are better off if women share in the responsibility of leadership, because leadership is difficult. And women bring some amazing things, which is what I want to talk about with you guys a little bit later. Tell me, so what else? Why else are women, yeah?
Yes, I think it is the nature of political process in Ukraine. The political process is quite patrimonial, and there are a lot of master client services and connections. And for women, even if she really urged to achieve something, it is hard for her to make fundraising, to make connections, because men, they cooperate between themselves better, and they have more power, and they better make stake on a man, but not on a woman.
Do you have a term for that? Because we call that the old boys club. Have you guys heard of that? So it just means that, it means just what you said, that men will go play golf together in the States. That's what they do. They go play golf. Sometimes they go to strip clubs. I mean, honestly, when I was working in a law firm not that long ago, the men sometimes would go, do you know what strip clubs are? Does that translate? Okay, it does. Okay, good. Well, yeah, it's not. I never went with them, but they have natural networking that sometimes women don't have. And I think the most interesting thing is, have you guys been watching what's been going on in the U.S. with sexual harassment? It is, I have not seen women more like riled up and excited in such a long time. I mean, I was just checking my Facebook before I came in here, and there are 2 new stories. So another U.S. senator who everybody loves. They don't love him anymore. He's out. He's out. And then there was another one too. And I think that the reason that relates, all of the sexual harassment movement relates, is that for a long time, if a woman wanted to network with a man, to be part of that, okay, so maybe you want to agree to go to dinner with somebody who could be helpful to you. But either people from the outside see the two of you at dinner, a man and a woman at dinner, and they think there's something going on, or something is going on. The man makes an advance because there you are all alone. And I think that's women, it's much harder for us. We don't have that natural network, and then we have that added complication of sometimes it's not safe for us to be alone with men, and so therefore, fine, we can network with women really, really well, and that's great.
And can I state a second reason?
Please.
I think that we have a low quality of education in small cities, and we lose really a big potential and a lot of resources in women creativity by not educating them and bad quality of schools in small cities. Those girls that don't have the opportunity to come to universities, to come to big cities. I think that is one of the reasons why we have the high rates of prostitution really in Ukraine.
Wow. But does that affect men and women equally? Like men from small towns are going to have the same problems? Or is it disproportionately women?
But it's easier for them to adopt in big cities than for a girl. That's my opinion.
I'm sure that's true. Well, that's really sad. And that's something that we don't talk about in the States. So I'm glad that you brought that up. What are there other things, other ideas you all have, or guesses about why women are not rising to the highest levels? Because you haven't said the thing I think is the most obvious. I mean, you kind of did, but yeah.
I think we still have this stereotype about the maternity leave.
Oh, good. See, that's what I was talking about. Maybe I did this subconsciously, yeah.
Yeah, I think that totally differs from the US, because in US that's okay when you leave your 3-month child baby at home. And in Ukraine you're always supposed to be, very often, not always, but still very often, supposed to be a bad mother when you do that. And if you don't stay till your kid is like 3 years old, it's like you're bad.
Wait, okay, so I wish we had more time to talk, because I think that is so interesting. I was learning that you all actually have a very good maternity policy, right? So women, remind me, so women can take up to 3 years and then still get their job back? And how much is paid? A year is paid. Okay. Does anybody know what it's like in the States?
3 months. No?
If you're lucky, you can do 3 months, but you're not paid. And so poor women, middle-income women, cannot afford to take 3 months off, so people don't do it. And the reason that I bring that up is that in the States, what the women think is one of the things holding us back is we don't have good enough maternity leave. But I read a really interesting article that says exactly what you just said, which is that when you have great maternity leave, it takes women out of the workforce for a really long time, and it's very hard for them to get back in and to assimilate and to be able to keep moving forward in their career. So anyway, you should talk to the American women and say, actually, you think we have it really good, but it's not necessarily true. But then I think the other thing, it's not just maternity leave, it's also that women still here and to a lesser extent in the United States, we do all of the housework and we do all of the childcare. I mean, so I heard that many Ukrainian families, you've got grandparents nearby who will help care for the children. So Ukraine's big too, but America's so big that we don't have the grandparent factor, and so it's harder, and childcare is so expensive. But just in general, and I certainly felt this in my life, having a job where you have a lot of responsibility and you are called upon to, you're playing a leadership role where you work, having to do that and then come home and do everything is absolutely totally exhausting. Is anybody in that position where you're having to do both? Or is everybody in that position? Children and job?
I have, but
yes.
I have my mother. My mother,
Oh.
She lives with us.
Uh-huh.
So she takes care about our children, my children.
That's really nice. That's
I have
great.
Children, and
yeah.
I am brand manager too in pharmaceutical company.
So I think that's fantastic, and that to me is the way that it should work. But do you get any criticism for not staying home with your child?
No.
Okay, well then that's good. It's funny because now in the U.S. almost all the women I know work, so the stigma is going away. But we don't have the grandparents at home, and coming home and having to do everything, it's difficult. And some women, young women, have told me, I don't want, or they don't even say that. They say I can't run for political office or be a leader, seek a leadership position in my job because I want to have a family, and I can't do both. Which, anyway, is very sad to me because I think it's absolutely wrong. Anything else? Because I can think of one other thing. Nothing? Okay, well, I actually thought of two other things. One is women, and maybe you guys kind of talked about this, but women not knowing the path to leadership, especially in politics, just not understanding how you get there because it's not something that we typically do. And then the second thing that's a big factor in the United States is not having as much money as men. In the United States, women still earn less than men, as they do here, and we tend to have less money. And running for office, you were talking about how running for office actually gives you a lot of money, but getting there takes a lot of money, and I think it does here too. And so women often say, well, I could never run for political office because my family doesn't have enough money. So, okay. And now I would love to talk to you guys about, so why do we care about getting women into politics? Who cares? Is it important? And if it's important, then why? Should I fold up my organization and go home? Is there any reason that I'm doing this? Like, what do you all think about why does it matter to have women in politics? What do women bring to leadership and to politics? Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's, as all I think it's really important, and I suppose women has another views for politics, for every problem, for solving problems than men, and in collaboration we can solve some problems better. And as you said before, men sometimes they want to have some power and realize themselves in this way, and women they mostly really democratic and they care about society. Yeah, so and in general the problem when women are not on top levels of and not in politics, it's connected with some stereotypes, and we have to break these stereotypes. So yeah, it's important, and I suppose when if more women will be in politics, we will have new solutions and we will have new ways.
So I believe that's so strongly, that women bring a different way of thinking, and they bring a different perspective, and they bring different life experiences. And we've got some great examples from the women in the U.S. Congress that when women got elected, they solved problems that nobody even, maybe the Congress that had been mainly male never even knew were problems. Like, I mean, I'll tell you one example, which is kind of interesting, is that, okay, for years, the American government paid a lot of money for testicular cancer research, so only men have testicles, so a lot of money for that cancer research, and nothing for breast cancer research. And it was only when more women got into Congress that suddenly we had money going to solve the problem of breast cancer. And it wasn't that the men were bad people and didn't care about women's health. They just hadn't thought about it because it wasn't in their experience. And so I think that there are a lot of examples like that where women are using, they're really representing people because, our life experience has not been represented. Okay, what else? So why is it a good thing to have women? Yeah. Oh, you need a mic, but...
Yes. I think that, first of all, women, they have a higher emotional intelligence, as we have quite a different structure of neural system. It works not like it works in men's health, and emotional intelligence helps us to look from the perspective of another side, for example, if we're talking about conflict. And I think that women should be engaged in the mediation process of the conflicts. That is something I believe. But, for example, if we talk about flexible thinking, yes, that women are smarter than men, I think it is very contested statements, because we don't have to say that men are totally worse than women here. And what the point I wanted to make is that women, they have different instruments. Yes, they have different maybe points of view. They appreciate the world in another way. But when they are in the politics, they still have to play the rules that are already in this political system, and they can't exploit the instruments and the tools they have to change that politics. Okay. They have to play the rules that men say.
Okay, wait, two things. Well, no, I'll talk about that. Okay, so, but that's because right now they're only 12%. So it's not very many. And even in the States, we've got almost 20%. That's still not very many. So what they say is you have to get to 30%. Once you're at 30%, whoever said, you were the optimist, you said 30%, okay. Once you get to 30%, they say it changes entirely. So what happens is all of a sudden women are not the outliers. They're not just the rare woman in the room. Like, look, there's a woman. All of a sudden they're enough that it looks normal to have women, and that it does change that. And once you get to that point, what better happen, and does happen a little bit already, is that women will not just play by the rules of the old system, that they will have the power to change the system. And there are some examples in American politics, which I really love, of, I mean, these are little things, but that women, when they were first elected to Congress, and the first woman who had a baby while she was in Congress, there was no breastfeeding room. Well, oh my gosh, let's back up. First, there was no bathroom. So she had to leave the building to go to a bathroom. I mean, that's ridiculous. So little things. Now they have a bathroom. And then the first woman who had a baby in Congress, she couldn't breastfeed, because there was no breastfeeding room. And so now there's a breastfeeding room. This woman in Israeli politics, she was in the Israeli parliament, and she was pregnant, but she also had 2 children at home. And I was asking her, is it hard to be a woman in parliament in Israel? And she said the hardest thing was when I started, all of the most important meetings started at 6 o'clock at night. And she said, that's no good. That's when I feed my children and I give them baths and put them to bed. So I can't do it then. So the first thing she did when she got in parliament was to change it to 3 o'clock. It's little, but it's like, okay, the system, you don't have to just play by the rules. You can, once you get in there, change it so it reflects the reality of your life. And that, I think, is so important, because American women look at our political system and they think, oh no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. And my job is to convince them, by getting into politics, you can influence the system. You can change it to be better for you. Okay, what else? There are other good things. Come on, ladies, represent for your people. Yes? Okay.
Я бы сказала, сравнила
whoops. Oh, well, hold on one second. Let me turn my...
Давайте.
Okay, yeah.
Вы знаете, я бы сравнила женщину в политике как женщина в семье. Почему? Потому что перед женщиной в семье встает Потому что перед женщиной в семье становится многозадачность, которую она поступательно ее решает. Вот. Гибкость, включая заботу, опеку и так далее, и так далее. И получается, когда женщина приходит в политику, вы очень правильно заметили, поднимаются те вопросы, на которые абсолютно не обращают внимания, те мелкие вопросы. Мужчины же за глобальность решения каких-то вопросов. А женщина все-таки поэтапно, по шажочку, она пытается решать то, на что в первую очередь не обращают внимания. И вы правильно сказали, чем больше становится женщин, тогда у нее появляются эти инструменты, за счет которых она может, женщина в политике, решить эти мелкие вопросы там. Поэтому почему я сравниваю это с семьей? Много женщин подтвердит, сколько бы задач перед ней не было, но она успевает ходить на работу, она успевает ходить работать, заботиться о детях и так далее, и так далее. Это как бы ее, вы знаете, обучает, тренирует ее. И это очень хорошо потом сказывается также в работе.
I totally agree. And I think that, and if I haven't said this before, I should definitely say it right now, is that I think that the worst thing that could happen, and we're in no danger of this, but it would be to have only women in politics. That the world swings to just kick out all the men and only have women. That would be as big a disaster as it is to only have men. Because you were saying men are thinking more global, women are thinking more the smaller issues or the family issues. Great, that's wonderful. So let's have an equal number so that there are people thinking about both things. I think that that's so important. And, just to your point about emotional intelligence, that was the other thing I wanted to say, is that there's a big move right now all over the world and here to include women on national security councils because the world has started to realize that the best, person to have helping with matters of national security is to have some women there who are going to look at that problem from a different lens, a necessary lens, not just the hard power lens, but the soft power diplomacy lens. Okay, there's some more things. Can we just talk about a couple more and then we'll move on? I know, thank you. I just saw you. Because there are a couple of things. Okay, good.
I want to say that in some companies have some problem. For example, if women and men have a similar position, they have different wages.
I know.
So it's problem. I think that. And if women have a political power, so I think she can solve this problem. And second question, it's when she have a baby. So I think that women should have enough money for carrying her baby, and very a lot of women in Ukraine carry their woman alone. So they didn't have a man or some husband. Husband, yes, and I think it's problem and. It influence for the demographic situation in Ukraine, and I want to ask you, what about demographic situation in U.S.? Is it influence there in U.S.?
Well, I mean, first of all, the problem of a wage gap is. I think you all are 76%. I wrote it down, actually. Let me see if I can find it. Well, who knows where I wrote it down. But I think that women make 76% of the wages that men do. It's so similar in the U.S. Maybe we're 78%, but I mean, we're right there. I believe absolutely that, and the same with women having resources to care for their children, women having somebody think about what's happening in women's lives and how could we improve women's lives. First of all, by the way, the world needs us to have babies, you guys. They need us to have children because without us, the world does not go on. And I sometimes think that men forget this, is that it's very important that we do this stuff. And how can we support women? So I think the reason that I have enthusiasm for my work and that I that it still makes so much sense to me to work to get young women to run is that I think that getting more women into office, it is going to do what you were talking about, or maybe it was you were talking about, is shining that light on problems that people just have not thought about before because they're not facing those same problems. Yes. Yeah, no, I definitely, well, I agree with you. So we're good. So I wanted to tell you just one other thing, and then I'll see if you guys have any questions. So when I'm talking to people who don't really understand why it's important to get women in, it does not help to talk about fairness. Like it's only fair. Women are half the population. Of course, we should have all these opportunities. They don't care about that. The thing that I found that people do care about is when I talk about the concrete examples of when women actually make a difference to society as a whole. And I'll give you just two of those examples. So I'll give you the less dramatic one first. So the first one is in the U.S. Congress, women have become the peacemakers. So we got the Democrats, we've got the Republicans, and they hate each other. I mean, they really hate each other. And because they can't work together, nothing gets done. I mean, this Congress that we've had, and last Congress too, we almost pass no legislation because the two sides are not talking to each other. And they need each other in order to pass legislation. So the people who've gotten things done over and over again have been the women. The women on this side will talk to the women on this side. They'll make deals, and we get stuff passed. And so that's one of my favorite examples. We had the government was going to be shut down. How many years ago? It's like 3 or 4 years ago. And at the last minute, this Republican woman in the Senate, she struck a deal with somebody on the Democratic side and made the whole thing, fixed the whole thing. And it was just so dramatic. Okay, so that's one thing. We actually, because of our style, there are real examples of things we've accomplished. Okay, so the second example comes from the corporate world. So all around the world right now, there's a move to include more women on corporate boards and in the highest level of corporations, in corporate leadership. And even in the States, not so much is happening, but in Europe, the European Union is either trying to or they just did pass a law that says that corporations have to have, I think it's 30% women on their corporate boards. But so the reason they're doing this is not really, in my mind, because they're trying to help women out. The reason they're doing this is that they found that when women are at the highest levels of corporations, when women sit on corporate boards, those companies do significantly better and have higher profits. Like 34% higher profits. And that is kind of amazing, because what that means is if you add women to leadership in companies, you get more money, right? And that is such a beautiful argument, because it's not about fairness. It's not about like, oh, we should be nice to women. It's about women bring something that is concrete and it's measurable. And this is what one of the reasons it's so important. And then the last part of that, which is interesting, is diversity matters. So American Congress right now, it's old white men. Like it's a sea of white heads when you look out. And I think your parliament is similar, right? Okay. So what one of the consulting firms did a study, and they tasked groups to find solutions to different problems. And so what they found is if you have a group where it has all the same type of people, all old white men, what the solutions they find to the problems are never as good as the groups that have women. They have young people, they have young men, they have people of color, they have people with disabilities, they have LGBT people. When you have different people solving a problem, then it's just what you said. So we're bringing different viewpoints, we're bringing different life experience, we're thinking about the problem in different ways, and it's that different thinking that ends up with a better solution. So that's where I'll leave you guys, because I think that that's a really good place to stop, is that there are not enough women in leadership, not in the Ukraine, not in the US, not anywhere in the world. And this is hurting not just women, but it's hurting the world as a whole. And so, I'm not going to leave you yet because I want to tell you one more thing. So I think it's really important to talk about these issues, to encourage women to seek leadership, to encourage yourselves to strive for a higher position, to not be scared to go to the next level, even if you're afraid to do it, even if it looks like it might be difficult to do it, because we need more women, and it has to be women like you who step up and say, I'm good enough, and I'm smart enough, and I can do this, and I'm going to be part of the solution. So thank you, guys. Thank you. This is really good to talk to you. And I'd be happy to take any questions that anybody has about anything. Yeah? Oh.
I don't want to sound unpolite, but
No.
I wonder what was the reason for you to come to Ukraine?
Oh, yeah.
Was it within the program, or was some other reason?
Well, no, that's not impolite. That's great. So I had an official reason, and then I have my sort of secret reason. So I'll tell you both of them. So the official reason is the U.S. Embassy invited me to come and speak to women in Ukraine. And I've done this now in 6 countries around the world, really different countries. I mean, I guess Moscow was one, but I've been to Israel, to Sri Lanka, to the Maldives, to Belgium, and to Algeria, to Kuwait, like really different countries in like different parts of the world. And it is, I learn so much every time I go, just about, how connected women in the world are, and just about how different countries think. But my secret reason is that Running Start is working with NDI, the National Democratic Institute in the U.S., that has a base in Ukraine, and we are doing some pilot programs on where we want to get young women, like ages 10 to 19, in Ukraine to see if our method of training works. So we're not doing it today. We will probably do it in a year, but that's the other reason I wanted to come and make connections and meet people who might be interested in helping that.
Thank you. And the other question, sorry, is what I think is also important, not what happens pretty often when you come to the empowerment of women and its importance, is that that men become some sort of isolated, and they are out of the dialogue somehow. And
out of the dialogue?
Yeah, like when it seems, and I think that it's sort of perception in Ukraine that it's sort of women club or too feminist, it goes like this. Is there any sort of solution to this issue? And
wait, but so that I think about that all the time, because I sit in rooms that are mainly women. And we say interesting, brilliant things about how we can solve this problem and what's going on, and there are no men listening. And I'm like, but wait. So I love that you're here, that all of you guys are here, because it's great to be able to talk about this stuff in a mixed audience, because it concerns you too. So what I really think is, I think that somebody should start a group where they talk to men and women together. You really should. I try and do it as much as I can, but sometimes it's hard to get the men to come. But it's important. So thank you. Yes, please.
Listening to you, I recall Mrs. Clinton. She did a lot to promote women's case.
Yeah, she did.
But it didn't help her.
No, it didn't.
Unfortunately, Mr. Trump doesn't promote.
No, he doesn't. Right. Do you have a question? I mean, I could talk about that all day. Well,
why it didn't help Clinton to get into the presidency?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the hardest question I've been asked in Ukraine. So, I think that many people would say that America isn't really ready for a woman president. So they say that they want a woman president, but I think that powerful women are threatening often, weirdly, not just to men, but to women too. And I think that I I think America will have a woman president, but I think that maybe for some people it was too soon with Hillary. It's hard to be a woman doing something as difficult, frankly, as running for president, especially because we've had other women run for president, but she certainly got higher than anybody else did. And she's writing her own script. She's making it up as she goes along. We don't know what that looks like to have a woman run for president. And so everything she did, she was, she had to second guess it. Like, am I wearing the right clothes? Is my voice right? Am I talking about the issues the right way? And so she just wrote a book, and she talks about why she lost. I have not read that book. I'm dying to read that book because I think it will be really interesting. But, you know, I think she hints at that too. She says, you know, maybe America is much more sexist than we thought. So, yeah. But it's so interesting too. So one thing my mother says is that when people start making progress on an issue, sometimes that's when all of a sudden you'll have a big backlash and things will get much, much worse. There we are, I think. So I think maybe America really was making progress, and right now things are not great for women in the U.S. And both Democrats and Republicans seem to feel that. So, okay. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
How did you decide to devote your professional career to these issues? So what is a particular event or particular case? Yeah.
No, I'll tell you. I don't always tell the story, but, and I think that there are a lot of reasons, but I'd had a really good career. So I worked in the Senate, and I worked in the White House, and then I went to law school, and I got a job at this great law firm. So I was standing really tall and feeling really good. And I would listen to women talk about discrimination or all the barriers they face to leadership and things not being fair. And I was like, what are they talking about? Like, everything's been easy for me. I mean, this is not a great reflection on me, but this is what I thought. And then I was 31, I think, and I got pregnant with twins. So not just one baby, but two babies. And I had to go in and talk to my boss, who was an older man at the law firm. I was very nervous to tell him, like, you know, have this thing going on. And he was great. He was wonderful. And actually, when I went back after they were born and said, now I'd like to work part-time, I don't want to work full-time at the firm, he was still great. He was wonderful. And then the firm started to have financial trouble, and they started to fire people. And but I thought, well, I'm great. Nobody's going to fire me. And so he called me into his office, and he said, you know, I'm so sorry, but you don't have a job here anymore, because. And I asked him, I was like, why? I always felt I did such good work, and he told me straight up. He's like, you don't make us as much money because you're working part-time. And so that was interesting. That was not good. But then later that day, I was in my office, you know, with my head in my hands, thinking, I can't believe I lost my job. And there were two men who I worked with really closely at the law firm, older men who I really loved, actually still love them. And they came in, one came in, and then the other was a little bit later, and they both said the same thing. And they said, Susanna, this is actually good for you because your babies need you at home. And, you know, my wife tried to work while she had babies, but you're so much better off. And honestly, I think it made me so angry that it's fueled me for years, because I felt like they'd trained me, and I was a good member of the firm, and just the idea that they thought all I was good for was raising my children, which, by the way, I have done, in my opinion, a great job of having a successful, wonderful career and spending a huge amount of time with my children because I really cared about it, and I structured my work that way. So, but they were saying you can't do both, you can only do one thing. And I think that's why I'm still doing this work, is because it made me angry. And when you were talking about let's get women into office so we can fix some of the inequity, that's what I think. So thanks for asking.
Hi, thank you very much for coming here and
Thanks.
speaking about issues that aren't really spoken widely in Ukraine. I know in America
good.
it's...
Yeah, we talk about it a lot.
yeah, it's quite the issue.
We do.
But my question is, other than on a grassroots level,
Mhm.
are you able to speak anyone from the Ministry of Education or anyone in the Rada, in Ukraine or in other countries,
Yeah.
to be able to also inspire other women who are already more or less in power
Yeah.
to be able to, after you leave,
Yeah.
have a lasting impact?
No, that's a really good question, actually. And I am actually not at all a fan of just talking about issues and talking about what's wrong and then saying, okay, bye-bye, it was good to talk to you guys. So in the States, we don't lobby, we don't advocate Congress to change laws to help make it easier for women to run, in part because we're bipartisan, so we work with both sides, and it's difficult to advocate when we're doing that. But what we do instead is we work really closely with the women who are in power and have them mentor our students, we send them out to schools to talk to students, and so in that way we're trying to get them to, but you're asking about here.
Yes.
No,
yes.
I haven't had the opportunity, but I would love to. But maybe as an American woman, I'm not going to have the influence that one of you guys would have, you know?
Thank you.
Anybody else? Other questions? Yeah.
Maybe I just wonder, maybe after you visited some of the countries as a representative of Running Start, were there any examples that people started some similar programs?
Yes, and that's been so good. Right, so we have, well, interestingly, we have a Running Start in Liberia. I've actually never been to Liberia, but I worked really closely with them through Skype chats, or video chats, which has been great. So my students and Liberian students, and that has worked really beautifully. And then there are a couple of other clubs abroad. I don't know how successful they are, but one of the reasons that I want to come back and do the pilot here is I want to figure out how we can have a presence in other countries that translates culturally, because I don't want us to come in and say, okay, this is how we do it. This will work for you, because it might not work. And so what we want to do is come and sort of figure out, okay, well, what does work, and how do you do it in a way that translates, and who's the best person to work with on the ground to do that. So yeah, so I think you should start a club right now, today. and actually, and on that note, one thing that I really do think is important is all of you all showed up here today because presumably you're interested in this topic and you've thought about this. And one thing that's been a constant theme of the week is that women don't support each other. We should be the most supportive of each other because we have the most to gain, but we're not always. And so I think it'd be fantastic if everybody in this room exchanged emails and actually met and continued talking about these things. And in some of the meetings I've had, we've spent a lot of time talking about solutions that are really Ukraine-centric, like, okay, what are the things that are going to work here? And one of the things they said is tutoring parents in how to talk to their children, both boys and girls, to get the right gender message. Like, that's great. We never even talk about that in the States and things like that. So yeah, I think you should be the leader, because you brought it up, and that you should organize everybody to sit and have a chat. And if you were saying that you guys don't talk about this stuff very much in Ukraine, then you should talk about it more, because I do think talking about it, especially if you're not just complaining, but you're talking about it in a way where you're trying to find solutions, even if they're little solutions, I think that that's very, very effective. So, yeah.
Yes, what I'm going to talk about, it's not concerned Ukraine, but it's more about Europe and US. Don't you think that so much talking about gender equality and that women should be in leadership, it creates additional pressure on women, like be involved in politics. They don't have to want to be politicians or be in leadership, but they have to face some social framework and social stereotypes that women should be in politics.
Yes. Okay. But so, yes. Right. And I don't feel so sorry for them. I really don't. So, and the reason is that often when I talk to a group, I ask people to raise their hands if they think that the world or their country or their community would be a better place if there were more women leading it. And almost every hand goes up. I mean, I don't care who's in that room. Almost everybody says, yeah, I think getting some more women into leadership would be a good thing. And then when I say, okay, so who's gonna do it? Okay, sometimes we have a couple of hands, but often nobody raises their hand. And so that's what we end up talking about is, of course not everybody is going to want to go into leadership. I get it, right? Okay, but here's the thing. So if I ask you guys that question and only you raise your hand and say you want to run for office, then everybody else thinks it should be somebody besides them, right? You all think that it's a great thing to have women in leadership, but just not you. It should be that other room of people, right? And that I think is the most important thing to sort of keep in mind is if not you, then who's going to do it? And I mean, it's hard and it's dirty and people say bad things about you and they can attack your family, hopefully just through like social media. And you might lose. Like there's so many reasons not to do it, but my whole goal in life is to get more women at least to think maybe it could be me, just to have that conversation. Maybe I have what it takes to do it because we're not having that conversation with ourselves. And I think every woman should at least think about it and not think about it, you know, when you were talking about power, not think about it like, would I like to be that person standing up, you know, making laws, etc. But think, is there something that I care so passionately about that nobody is changing? I mean, like what you were talking about, like, you know, women raising their children on their own and not getting support. Maybe that makes you so mad that you say, nobody else is doing something about it, and I could actually do this. I can be the person who helps to change that. That's what I want. So I get it, and I don't feel the least bit sorry for women in the US or Europe or here, because I think we should all have that conversation. And did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question about young girls.
Yeah.
You told that you will have maybe a future program for girls from 10.
Yeah.
And do you have such program in US now or not?
No. So we started age 14. But I really think even 8-year-old girls, it'd be so smart to talk to them that young, because I have 2 nieces. My nieces are... They're 10 and 12, but they've been interested in politics, or not interested in politics, but they've been interested in leadership and about like what they can do with their lives for a long time. And I try to influence them every time I'm with them, as you can imagine. But I think that, the earlier you start, the better. And then the other thing that I really think, and I guess we touched on this earlier, is that somebody's got to talk to the boys, because young boys growing up, you know, if they grow up and they carry on the same stereotypes, it's just as bad as if the girls carry those stereotypes on. So somebody needs to talk to the boys and get them to understand that it's important for their lives too to have women equal to them. But nobody's doing that in the States. We need to do that. Well, thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed this. This is really great. And I don't have very many business cards, but I've got business cards in the back if anybody wants to keep in touch, or if you want to have some help starting your new club, or help me as I do the, try to bring this pilot program back. I've got to figure out where to do it. I've got to figure out who to do it with. So I would love your help. Thank you guys.